Good day. Bonjour. Again, I just want to reiterate how much we're hearing from people about the fact that they need help now. We are hearing stories of folks they're going to lose their homes, people that are not able to afford groceries. The impact of the cost of living is being felt on people. And when they see the only solution is to increase interest rates, they see that as more pressure on the shoulders of people that have not caused this inflation, working people that were not at fault, did not cause this inflation, and now are bearing the burden of it and are going to bear more pain if it's just about increasing interest rates. And that's why we really want to be clear. Given everything that we know, that corporations have increased their prices beyond the increased costs and are making record profits, and in light of their record profits, economists have said that they are contributing significantly to inflation, that corporate greed is contributing to the inflation that we're experiencing right now. Given the pain that people are going through, we are calling for help immediately for families. And our plan is one, to send $500 to $1,000 to families, working families, to workers, to people. This is a plan that will not introduce new money. It's about redistributing existing money. It is a plan supported by economists. It will not contribute to inflation, and it will provide immediate relief to people. This is our plan. We are urging the government to do what's right here and help people. They're going to need help over the summer. We know families are canceling trips to visit their relatives because they can't afford to. We know people are putting back groceries because they can't afford to buy it. And so people need help. And this is our plan to do that. Again, we need to focus on the needs of people and respond by giving people direct help. Donc aujourd'hui encore, on exige du gouvernement de livrer l'aide financière directe aux familles, aux travailleurs, parce que c'est clair avec le coût de la vie qui augmente que ça frappe fort. Et on sait que les grandes entreprises gagnent des profits records en même temps que les familles ont des difficultés à rejoindre les deux bouts. Donc notre plan, c'est de livrer l'aide directe aux familles jusqu'à $1,000. Et c'est une façon de redistribuer la richesse dans le système. Ça n'introduit pas de nouveau argent. C'est une façon de redistribuer qui ne augmente pas l'inflation, mais qui va aider les familles dans ces temps difficiles. Si la seule réponse pour régler l'inflation est d'augmenter les taux d'intérêt, ça va mettre encore plus de pression sur les épaules des familles. Et c'est inacceptable comme réponse si on n'ajoute pas une autre réponse de l'aide financière aux familles. Et c'est pourquoi on exige le gouvernement de suivre notre plan de livrer cette aide immédiatement. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have. Merci, je suis prêt pour vos questions.
And we'll start with questions from the room. If you're joining online, please use the raise hand function to notify us of your question. Nous allons function to notify us of your question. Nous allons commencer par la salle. Si vous êtes en ligne, utilisez la fonction lever la main pour nous avertir de votre question.
Bonjour, M. Singh, Michel
Bonjour.
Sabat de la presse canadienne. Vous dites que vous voulez verser jusqu'à $1,000. Premièrement, est-ce que vous pouvez être un peu plus précis sur quel montant, dans quelles circonstances, c'est quoi exactement que vous proposez, à qui, comment? On commence avec ça comme question.
OK, merci. Donc, notre plan, il y a une crédit d'impôt pour la TPS. Et cette crédit d'impôt, c'est un outil qui aide un grand montant de personnes, mais particulièrement les personnes les travailleurs et les familles qui ont le plus besoin. Donc, ça va cibler les gens. Donc, le crédit d'impôt de la TPS, c'est une façon. Le deuxième, c'est le bénéfice canadien pour les enfants. Donc, ce sont les deux outils qu'on propose. Et notre proposition, c'est de doubler le crédit d'impôt pour la TPS et d'augmenter le bénéfice canadien pour les enfants de $500. Donc, ça veut dire, pour une famille, le potentiel d'avoir $1,000 de plus. Pour les autres familles, ça veut dire pour les autres personnes et travailleurs, ça veut dire $500. Mais c'est un vrai montant, un montant qui va vraiment avoir une différence dans la vie des gens, qui paient plus pour les épiceries et pour l'essence. Donc, c'est un outil qui va fonctionner pour livrer l'aide aux familles et ça cible les travailleurs et les familles dans une manière qui n'ajoute pas de nouveau argent pour avoir le potentiel d'augmenter l'inflation. C'est un outil euh, appuyé par les économistes qui va aider à réduire la pression sur les épaules des familles, mais qui ne va pas aussi augmenter l'inflation.
Deuxièmement, est-ce que vous avez chiffré votre mesure? Puis d'autre part, vous dites que c'est appuyé par des économistes, mais on parle d'injecter de l'argent dans l'économie. De quels économistes faites-vous référence?
Une économiste en particulier, c'est Jim Stanford. C'est une économiste qui appuie cette approche. Il y a des autres aussi. Notre équipe peut vous fournir les autres économistes aussi. Donc, c'est un plan qui utilise le fait que le gouvernement a plus de revenus causés par l'inflation. Donc, c'est un outil pour, c'est une approche prudente parce qu'on utilise le fait que le gouvernement a aussi vu une augmentation de revenus. Donc, on peut utiliser ça pour augmenter le crédit d'impôt de la TPS. Et aussi, on propose que les ultra riches, les grandes entreprises payent le juste part. Si on parle des profits dans cette année, les grandes entreprises à travers les pays ont gagné des profits records et des économistes aussi montrent que ces profits records des grandes entreprises contribuent à l'inflation. Donc, on propose de s'assurer que les grandes entreprises payent le juste part, le profit excessif, ils payent le juste part pour redistribuer cet argent dans le système pour les travailleurs, pour les familles.
Jordan Gowling, CTV News. I just want to go back to allegations of political interference in RCMP investigation regarding the Nova Scotia mass shooting. You said yesterday that you would like a full investigation. You acknowledge the seriousness of the situation. But how can you and your party fully and impartially investigate a government that you are in partnership with and depend on to pass legislation? How do you balance that?
Well, we've already shown, actually, that we've voted against government bills. We've proposed our measures the government has voted against. We remain a fully independent opposition party with clear indicators voting against government bills, arguing against their propositions or their proposals, and putting forward our own proposals, which have been voted down by the Liberals. We remain completely independent. And when it comes to what we fought for Canadians, yes, we're absolutely committed to making sure people get things like dental care, that they can take care of their teeth, that they'll receive some support for families that need help with their rent. We're sending out an additional $500 to about 1 million families to get help in this tough time. So we are proud of that work. We know that a lot more needs to be done. We're going to continue to fight for people. We have fought for them, and we'll fight more. And we remain independent. So the question around the serious allegations, we will hold the government to account. We will bring witnesses to a committee, and we are prepared to do whatever it is required and what is possible to get to the truth, because Canadians want to know what happened. These are serious allegations of interference. If they happen, when they happen, why they happen. These are all important questions that need to be answered. And as our role as opposition, we can find that out.
So in the context of what I'm sure will be an investigation, what threshold needs to be met for you to put an end to the confidence and supply agreement you have with the government?
So the two things are completely unrelated. We can call witnesses in committee. We can ascertain what happened. We can ask questions. We can get to the bottom of this. And that has nothing to do with the agreement. It's not in any way limited. The agreement states clearly that we are an opposition party. We will ask questions of the government. We will hold them to account. We will challenge decisions. We can ask questions, and we can call witnesses. Nothing in the deal precludes us from doing our work as an opposition party. And so we can continue to do that. We can hold the government to account, and we can also deliver things like making sure kids under 12 get their teeth looked after.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Singh. David Thurton, CBC News.
Good morning.
You're proposing to send up to $1,000 to low-income families. Can you explain to me how that is not injecting new money into the system?
It's redistributing existing money. What we're proposing is there's a windfall government revenue from the GST because of inflation. So we can use that as a vehicle to GST tax credit. When we look at inflation right now, one of the drivers of inflation unequivocally is the fact that corporations are posting record profits. If you look at the profits that corporations are making, they exceed the increased costs that can be attributed to increased costs of gasoline or other factors of inflation. Because they're making record profits, they're increasing their amount that they're generating. We can use tools to make them pay their fair share and redistribute that to families that need it most. Working families, families that are feeling the pressure of inflation. If we don't act, and the only solution to dealing with the cost of living going up is to increase interest rates, which is the traditional approach, all that will do will put more pressure on the shoulders of families that are already hurting. To lessen that blow, which we must do, there's no question about it, we are proposing a tool to redistribute money that's already in the system, increase profits of corporations, and the windfall that the government has because of inflation has increased the GST revenue. Using those two tools will soften the landing, soften the blow for families to make sure they get some support, and it does not inject new money into the system, which might have the potential of increasing inflation.
Still don't understand, but you're taking, I understand that the corporations are generating more profits, there's more money coming in from the GST, but then you're putting that money back into the system and people are going to spend it. So isn't that new money that you're putting into the system? And I mean, that's fine. Economists have said, you know, inflation is hurting low-income families really badly, and if you support them, it probably won't have a huge impact. It's just a minor section of the population, but you're saying it's not new money, but it actually is new money you're putting into the system. It's
redistributing existing money in the system. So it's taxing super wealthy corporations that have made record profits and then redistributing that wealth to families. It's using the windfall from the GST and contributing that towards families that need help, as opposed to a new program that requires deficit spending or requires going further into debt to fund. This is not one of those programs. This is a program that requires using existing funds and redistributing it. It's a different approach as opposed to a deficit spending approach.
Hi, I'd like on a completely different topic. I'd like to know from you what votes, what measures the NDP supported or chose not to support. I think, for example, of the China documents at committee because of the Liberal NDP arrangement. Like, if you could be as specific as possible about things that your party has chosen to support or not support because of the arrangement in place.
Our arrangement meant that we pass a legislation that we supported, and that legislation was sped up through Parliament. So a number of time allocation votes were votes that we supported because we agreed that we wanted to move things along in Parliament. We saw, and it's very obvious to see, Conservatives that wanted to obstruct Parliament, obstruct the passage of bills, and so we supported the passage of a number of time allocation motions, which allowed for the passage of some bills at the end of the session. Those are things that we did, one, because we supported those bills, and the speedy passage of those bills, or accelerated passage, was as a result of our agreement to make sure Parliament works effectively to get bills passed, as opposed to having them bogged down. And then in exchange for that, what we are going to hold the government to, because we envisioned that our portion would happen first, that confidence motions, supply motions, and bills would pass early, and that the programs that we are pushing for would take some more time. So what we expect before the end of the year, and what I told the Prime Minister on a phone call that we had as a part of our deal, our conversation in terms of accountability. There's Prime Minister to leader meetings in addition to Oversight Committee, House Leader and Whips meetings, and critic to minister meetings. So in our phone call, I said clearly to the Prime Minister, we've done our part. We expect now that kids under 12 will get their teeth looked after. We expect that families that need help for their rent will get the $500 top up to the Canada Housing Benefit. And that if that does not happen, we will not continue in the agreement. But I'm very confident it will happen, but we express that very clearly.
Get your thoughts on Mr. Blanchet's comments earlier this week, where he said that the sitting had been marked by, en français, un choc des valeurs entre le Québec et le Canada. He referred to Bill 21 and Bill 96. And I wonder if you think that the rhetoric coming out of the CAT government in Quebec on these identity questions, there was a poll this week, I'm sure you saw it, about Francophones' impressions or of the rest of the Anglophones in the rest of the country, what they think of them. Are you worried that, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, what, if anything, you think that does? One, do you agree with Mr. Blanchet? Two, do you think that Mr. Legault and his government's rhetoric on these questions are perhaps helping to fuel some sort of, I have my thoughts. I don't want to put words in your thoughts, but do you, so I don't know how to phrase this question without making it leading, but do you see that contributing to something? And if so, what is it?
Okay. Well, first I'll take the approach. I'm not someone who shares the approach of Mr. Blanchet, obviously, but I can speak first from the position, or Mr. Legault. They have their own approaches. I don't share their approach, but I do start my comments with recognizing there's some legitimate concerns around language, francophones that have not, we've seen some evidence around the public service and concerns around people not having an equal participation of bilingualism, or not having good representation of French. And these concerns are valid and real, and we've seen the evidence around it. And so those are things that the federal government has to be a good leader on in defending the French language and defending bilingualism. So those are important things, and I share those concerns. When it comes to a separate set of values, I think there are far more things that connect us. When I spend time in Quebec, people of Quebec want to take care of one another, believe in social programs that lift each other up. They believe in things like our healthcare, and they have been, in a lot of ways, leaders in social programs like having a pharmacare program in Quebec that provides care for those that don't have the means to be able to afford their medication. So those are the things that unite us, and I think Canadians have far more in common, whether we're talking east to west, coast to coast, or Quebec and French-speaking and English-speaking. We have so much more that unites us in this vision of a country where we take care of one another. And so I really believe in that. I lean into that. And there'll be folks that will try to focus in on the divisions and things that separate us. There are important things that we need to acknowledge for the nation of Quebec. But I really lean into the fact that as a country, we have far more that unites us, and we believe in taking care of each other, which is something that is a really unifying factor. Oui, je pense que ça mérite de répondre en français aussi. Donc, je commence la réponse en disant que, naturellement, évidemment, mon approche est différente des autres chefs notés par la journaliste dans la question. Mon approche est évidemment différente, mais je veux commencer en reconnaissant qu'il y a des inquiétudes vraies et fortes, des inquiétudes sur le manque de leadership dans la défense de la langue française au niveau fédéral, et la question du bilinguisme et les chiffres qui montrent que clairement il n'y a pas assez de priorité pour défendre la langue française au niveau fédéral. Donc ce sont des sortes des inquiétudes qui sont vraies, et je appuie ou je partage ces inquiétudes, et je veux voir que ces inquiétudes sont réglées. On a une leadership au niveau fédéral pour défendre le bilinguisme. Mais la question en général, est-ce qu'il y a une approche, est-ce qu'il y a une division entre le Québec ou les francophones et le reste du Canada? Dans mon avis, je pense qu'il y a plus des valeurs qui nous rassemblent, qui nous divisent. Et je parle du fait qu'au Québec, le Québec était avant-gardiste avec des programmes pour appuyer les gens moins nantis, des programmes comme une assurance médicaments au Québec qui a aidé plusieurs personnes, une approche, un appui pour notre système de santé universel. Donc, je crois profondément qu'il y a plus des valeurs qui nous ressemblent comme pays, une idée de on doit soigner les uns les autres. On est plus fort quand on prend soin des uns des autres. On a un plus fort pays quand on aide les gens moins nantis et on aide nos voisins. Cet esprit, cette valeur, c'est quelque chose qui nous rassemble. Et je pense que oui, on va toujours avoir des gens qui ciblent les divisions, mais pour moi, les valeurs qui nous ressemblent sont plus fortes et c'est où je mets ma priorité et mon emphase.
La prochaine question sera en ligne. The next question will be online. Cormac McSweeney, please go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So a new CMHC report came out this morning saying that Canada needs to build more than 22 million homes by the end of the decade if we want to have housing affordability restored. Right now, the trend is towards 19 million. So we're about 3.5 million short of where we probably should be if we want to make housing more affordable. How do we deal with that situation? How do you propose the federal government, and I will point out this report says it's not the federal government alone that will fix this. It has to be everybody involved in housing to try and get these new units built. But how do you think we get provinces, cities, developers all on the same page in order to address the shortfall of millions of homes that need to be built if we want to make things affordable again?
I really appreciate the question. Probably one of the biggest worries that we hear across the country, the biggest worry that I hear before the pandemic unequivocally was housing, and it's only gotten worse. People are worried about finding a home that they can either buy or rent. It is impossible for a lot of people to stay in the communities where they grew up. Lots of people are leaving, not because they are seeking new opportunities, but they simply can't afford to live where they grew up. And that's a serious problem. It's impacting people in communities across our country. What used to be something that maybe was isolated more to large urban centers, and particularly in Vancouver and Toronto and in the surrounding areas, has now become an issue that impacts people even in rural communities. It's something that is really difficult. And part of the reason why we're in this situation with a lack of housing and a lack of affordable housing is for decades the federal government hasn't actually done its part. Since the 90s, there hasn't been a significant and concerted effort on the federal government to contribute to building these affordable homes, to building and funding the building of more homes. And that's why we're seeing this shortfall. And what CMHC has outlined is really a serious gap. So we need to just massively contribute to building more homes that are affordable. There are a number of ways for us to do it. The federal government can play a really important role in providing funds that are accessible for municipalities, working with all levels of government to support this, providing federal funding directly to build more homes, using federal lands that can be converted into affordable housing. There are a number of tools that we can use. But first and foremost, there has to be a priority. And what we've said for a long time is that we need to make housing and building homes a priority. We need to build all sorts of housing, whether it's housing for a young family, whether it's for someone with low income, someone with no income. All sorts of housing need to be built for us to respond to the needs of Canadians. And it's going to take an immense effort, but it is absolutely achievable if the federal government makes this a priority. There's laws that we can enact that will make it easier. There are funds that we can put in place, and there's partnerships that we can do. It really comes down to making it a priority, and that's something that New Democrats strongly believe we need to deliver on, and we will continue to fight for. In our agreement, we've included a number of tools that will help in this fight. We've forced the government to increase funding in things like the Accelerated Housing Program, in a fund for building housing, and a rapid housing initiative, as well as changing the definition of what's affordable. All of these are things that are going to help in this fight, but we need to do a lot more, and we're committed to doing that.
And follow-up is on a very different subject, but some Tory MPs met with some key figures of the convoy movement, if you will, the demonstrations that we've seen apparently on Parliament Hill, one of the buildings in the parliamentary precinct yesterday. And they called themselves allies to the cause, and there were references to civil war and stuff like that. How do you respond to the meeting itself, and looking towards Canada Day, when convoy demonstrators are promising another day of action in the capital? Do you have any concerns about security for Canada Day with another demonstration being planned?
I want to respond to this question with a little bit of context. First of all, I meet with people that I disagree with regularly. It is something that we should do. We should hear from people that we don't agree with. And that's an important thing to do. Hearing different viewpoints, opposing viewpoints is a part of our democracy, and everyone should be open-minded enough to meet with someone that they don't agree with. General context. What I'm concerned about is when elected officials are supporting clearly false things. It is clearly true that vaccination is healthy, and it keeps people healthy, and it has saved lives. Supporting views that vaccination is dangerous, which are completely unfounded, is problematic, and it's not something that should be supported. When we look at the convoy specifically, people can have different viewpoints, and that's healthy. We should have that. But the convoy, if we want to be very specific, and the occupation of Ottawa, they had a very clear mandate and a very specific goal. They posted it on their website. They repeated it in a number of press conferences. Their goal was to overthrow the democratically elected parliament. And that's not something that we should be supporting. That's not something that elected officials should be supporting. To be advocating for the undemocratic overthrow of parliament is clearly wrong. And it's not something that public officials or elected officials should be supporting. And so those are deep concerns. What happened in Ottawa, to be very clear, was harassing citizens, intimidating people on the streets, causing lots of discomfort and pain for people by making noise at night, disrupting families and children, and not actually doing what a protest should do, which is to target government decisions or to target the government. This was harassment of citizens, and it was wrong. And people were hurt by it. Small businesses were hurt by it. Families were hurt by it. So again, that's not something that should be supported by elected officials, because it's harmful and it was hurtful to people. It was not, as claimed, a protest against government. It was harassment of citizens. And that's not something that I think should be supported.
And this concludes the press conference. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse. Merci.
Merci. Thank you.